So we know that there was a rebellion during the Civil War, but what people don't realize is that if there was no rebellion, white people would have a lot more control over the United States than they do now. A lot more. Because the deal with Lincoln and the Republicans was to maintain slavery and not expand it into the territories. That's the only reason why they voted for him. So that means that black people would not be in the Western territories. They would not want black people in the Western territories, and it would be all white and all free. And they already controlled the North, right? There was de facto segregation. It was understood that black people over here, white people over here, and white people are in charge. It was understood. So de facto segregation means that there was no law. It was just commonplace. Now, because these people rebelled, they lost. And then you had the 13th Amendment. Then black people could go anywhere. This is not what the Northerners wanted, right? Because it defeats the purpose of them having all the Western territories for themselves. So, and of course, the North, all for themselves. Because most likely they would see what's happening in the Western territories. It would be all white. They would probably push black people into the South because that's where black people are. And then you would have exclusively white people in the North and definitely exclusively white people in the Western territories. That huge amount of land. So California and all those states would not be the way they are now. They'll be totally different, especially California will be totally different than it is now. But they rebelled, they lost, 13th Amendment, black people could go anywhere. Now, eventually, of course, they got control by kicking black people out of the legislatures in the states, through terrorism. And then, of course, they got control of the United States. But that's nothing compared to what they would have had if these people didn't rebel. So when people are out there venerating the monuments, the statues, the flag and stuff like that, it's like, what are you doing? Like, it's a complete joke. It's a complete joke. Like, you're venerating these people that lost you supremacy in the United States. So it's a complete joke. But of course, in the United States, there's a lot of ignorance and there's a lot of misinformation about history. So it's not surprising. Also, what is fascinating is that some people think that Lincoln is a racist, and I beg to differ because there is no reason for him to actually put forward the 13th Amendment, right? Because he knew exactly what would happen. All you have to do is beat these people because they had limited resources. They obviously were going to lose. Beat them, punish them, and then you could continue slavery. But no, he says, like, we're going to free everybody. But that goes against his promise to the Northerners. But I believe he knew that. He knew that white people would have a huge chunk of land for themselves, and he wanted to stop that. The only way to stop that was to have the 13th Amendment, get rid of slavery, and then black people could go anywhere. If he was a white supremacist, that would not happen. He would not do that. That would be a huge mistake. Because the reason why the Northerners wanted to maintain slavery, even though they didn't like slavery, is because it kept black people in the bubble. The South was their territory. That was black people's territory. So black people were there. It kept black people in the bubble so they wouldn't go anywhere else. So they wanted the Western territories for themselves to be all white and all free. So if Lincoln was a white supremacist, a racist, he would not put forward the 13th Amendment. I mean, I think that should be a given, but some people think that, like, well, no, he's a racist. Like, what? How does that make any sense? If you really, really think about it, it doesn't make any sense. Another thing that's interesting is the whole white thing. Now, back in the day during slavery times, a lot of Caucasians did not consider themselves to be white at all, and rightfully so, because they didn't own anything. Most Caucasians, most Negroes didn't own anything, so they were not considered to be white. Okay, so if you had slaves and land or just land, you were considered to be white. You're basically a property owner. So an African could be a white person, a Indian could be a white person, Chinese, and so on and so forth. If you have that social status, because it's a social status, white. It's just like celebrity, it's a social status. Just like nobility, it's a social status. It has nothing to do with color. It's a social status. Now, let me put it in perspective. Let's say that Mr. Candy in Django Unchained, he's a slave owner, right? He has a lot of land, a lot of slaves. He happens to be Caucasian, but he's considered to be white folk. Now, if you were to tell him that a piss poor Caucasian over there doesn't have a pot to piss in, he's considered to be white. He would think that you are the most ignorant, stupid person alive. Even if you had like a Caucasian that had a 9 to 5 job, he was very responsible with his money, he's not in debt, and he's considered to be a Caucasian. Still, that's like, what does that make me? You understand? That's what Mr. Candy would say, like, what does that make me? Let me put it another way. You have nobility, right? Nobility, basically, you have a whole bunch of estates, a whole bunch of land, you know, people working for you. You have a lot, right? Now, if you were to say every Caucasian is of nobility, how does that make any sense? You understand? So you're telling me that this peasant, this serf, is of nobility compared to somebody who has a whole bunch of land, a whole bunch of people working for him, a whole bunch of money. You're telling me that a serf and a peasant is considered to be of nobility. Doesn't make any sense. But that's what, you know, they try to make you think about whiteness. But white had nothing to do with skin color. So an African or a black person that had slaves and land, or just land, was considered to be a white person. Sometime after slavery, they made every Caucasian, those who they deemed Caucasian, as white. Okay, everybody else was colored. So that means that colored people can't aspire to be white. They can't get into that social class. Okay, it's like celebrities. They're saying that, oh, every celebrity is a Caucasian. So that means colored people cannot aspire to be celebrities. Every Caucasian is of nobility. So colored people can't aspire to be of nobility. So that's what they did. So again, they're misinforming you about history. There's a lot of things that they're misinforming you about. It is insane, but I thought you should know about that.